The U.S. hikers Josh Fatal and Shane Bauer arrived in New York this weekend after being held for more than 2 years in an Iranian prison. The hikers were released last week, then taken to Oman, where they were joyfully reunited with their families. Last night was their first night to sleep in the United States. In July of 2009, Bauer and Fatal were arrested, along with Sarah Shourd, while hiking near the Iran-Iraq border. Bauer is a freelance journalist who's contributed to Democracy Now! And other media outlets. Fatal is an environmental activist. Sarah Shourd was released last year. Upon arriving in New York, Josh and Shane addressed reporters at a news conference at a Midtown hotel. These are their first extended comments since being released.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming here today. My name is Josh Fatal. After 781 days in prison, Shane and I are now free men. Last Wednesday, we had just finished our brief daily exercise in the open-air room at Evin Prison, where something totally unexpected happened. On any other day, we would have been blindfolded and led down the hallway back to our 8-foot by 13-foot cell. But on that day, the guards took us downstairs, they fingerprinted us, and they gave us street clothes. They didn't tell us where we were going. Instead, they took us to another part of the prison, where we saw Dr. Salam al-Ismaili, the envoy of His Majesty Sultan Qaboos of Oman. And the first thing Salam said when we got to him, he looked at us and he said, "Let's go home." What followed was the most incredible experience of our lives. We were held in captivity, in almost complete isolation, for more than 2 years. But for the past few precious days, we've been experiencing free life anew with our families in Muscat. In all the time we spent in detention, we had a total of 15 minutes of telephone calls with our families and one short visit from our mothers. We had to go on hunger strike repeatedly just to receive letters from our loved ones. Many times, too many times, we heard the screams of other prisoners being beaten, and there was nothing we could do to help them. Now, solitary confinement was the worst experience of all of our lives. It was a nightmare that Sarah had to endure for 14 months. Sarah's strength during the 1-hour meetings that we were allowed with her lifted our spirits daily. 1 year ago, when Sarah was released, our world shrank. In prison, we lived in a world of lies and false hope. The investigators lied that Ambassador Loy from the Swiss embassy in Tehran did not want to see us. They told us, again falsely, that we would be given due process and access to our lawyer, the courageous and persistent Mr. Masoud Shafi. The most infuriatingly, they even told us that our families stopped writing us letters. Releasing us is a good gesture, and no positive step should go unnoticed. We applaud the Iranian authorities for finally making the right decision regarding our case. But we want to be clear. They do not deserve undue credit for ending what they had no right and no justification to start in the first place. From the very start, the only reason we had been held, the only reason we have been held hostage is because we are American. Sarah was held for 410 days The two of us were held for 781 days. That's far too long. And that's far longer than the American hostages at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in 1979. It was clear to us from the very beginning that we were hostages. Hostage is the most accurate term because, despite certain knowledge of our innocence, the Iranian government has tied our case to its political disputes with the U.S. Thank you. I would like to hand now over to Shane. He helped me through the worst days of my life, and I cannot imagine how I would have made it through these 2 years without him.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you, everyone, for being here. We will always regret the grief and anxiety that our fateful hiking trip led to, above all for our families. But we would like to be very clear. This was never about crossing the unmarked border between Iran and Iraq. We were held because of our nationality. Indeed, there are many other cases of unauthorized entry to Iran in which people were simply fined or deported after a short time. We do not know if we crossed the border. We will probably never know. But even if we did enter Iran, that has never been the reason why the Iranian authorities kept us in prison for so long. The only explanation for our prolonged detention is the 32 years of mutual hostility between America and Iran. The irony is that Sarah, Josh, and I oppose U.S. policies towards Iran which perpetuate this hostility. We were convicted of espionage because we are American. It's that simple. No evidence was ever presented against us. That is because there is no evidence, and because we are completely innocent. The 2 court sessions we attended were a total sham. They were made up of ridiculous lies that depicted us as being involved in an elaborate American-Israeli conspiracy to undermine Iran. Sarah, Josh, and I have experienced a taste of the Iranian regime's brutality. We've been held in almost total isolation from the world and everything we love, stripped of our rights and freedom. You may ask us, now that you are free, can you forgive the Iranian government for what it has done to you? Our answer is this. How can we forgive the Iranian government when it continues to imprison so many other innocent people and prisoners of conscience? It is the Iranian people who bear the brunt of this government's cruelty and disregard for human rights. There are people in Iran who are imprisoned for years simply for attending a protest, for writing a pro-democracy blog, or for worshiping an unpopular faith. Journalists remain behind bars and innocent people have been executed. If the Iranian government wants to change its image in the world and ease international pressure, it should release all political prisoners and prisoners of conscience immediately. They deserve their freedom just as much as we do. In prison, every time we complained about our conditions, the guards would immediately remind us of comparable conditions at Guantanamo Bay. They would remind us of CIA prisons in other parts of the world and the conditions that Iranians and others experience in prisons in the U.S. We do not believe that such human rights violations on the part of our government justify what has been done to us. Not for a moment. However, we do believe that these actions on the part of the U.S. provide an excuse for other governments, including the government of Iran, to act in kind. Thank you. Josh and I now want to express our thanks to everyone who helped make today happen.
When our mothers were allowed to visit us in May of 2010, they told us about the campaign to win our freedom. We owe a lifelong debt of gratitude to so many people. Their efforts mean we are free, and we will never be able to thank them enough. Our thanks go first and foremost to our wonderful families, who have done more for us than we can ever repay. This has been their ordeal as much as it has been our ordeal. And they have sacrificed so much for us to be here today. That includes Sarah, who had joined them as soon as she was free in their tireless work to achieve our freedom. We owe all of them a great debt, and our love for you is unqualified and eternal. They include all our friends, here at home and overseas. Like our families, many of our friends put their own lives on hold to fight for our freedom. Like our families, they did so while coping with their own pain about our detention. You are our true friends, and you always will be. And they include tens of thousands of people in America and all over the world, including Iran. They've expressed their support for us, donated to Free the Hikers campaign. They've prayed for us, each in his and her own way. We will never know most of these people, but we want them to know that we love them, and we always will. We thank you for all the energy and comfort you sent to us while we were dealing with our darkest hours. Our lawyer, Mr. Masoud Shafi, took on our case at the end of 2009, and he has been a determined and brave advocate ever since. He was never allowed to represent us properly, but he never gave up. We will always stand by him, as he stood by us for so long. His Majesty Sultan Qaboos of Oman and his envoy, Dr. Salam al-Ismaili, worked ceaselessly to bring us home. We are humbled by their humanity and their unswerving commitment to justice. We are eternally grateful for their kindness and hospitality that they and the people of Oman showed to us and to our families. The Swiss ambassador to Iran, Livia Loy Angosti, and her colleagues never stopped trying to get consular access and also to try to resolve our case. We were denied our rights to their visit, but we know that Livia and her colleagues would show up time and again at Evin Prison to try to see us. Thank you for your unstinting dedication.
We also want to express our great thanks to the many world leaders and individuals who championed our cause. They include the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, President Jalal Talabani of Iraq and Hugo Chavez of Venezuela, and the governments of Turkey and Brazil. They were certain of our innocence, and their certainty made a difference. They include the actor Sean Penn, the great Muhammad Ali, Noam Chomsky, the singer Yusuf Islam, Cindy Sheehan, and Nobel laureates Archbishop Desmond Tutu and May Reed Maguire. We will always remember that you stood by us. There were also U.S. government officials who worked for our release, and some of them found creative ways to try and lessen the tension between the U.S. and Iran. Consular officials at the State Department supported our families throughout. Our members of Congress spoke up for us, publicly and privately. Ambassador Richard Schmier, his wife Sandy, and the staff of the U.S. Embassy in Oman were most gracious with their time and hospitality, twice now. They have our gratitude for their support and kindness. The sympathy and support of many Muslim and other religious leaders in America, the Iranian people and elements within the Iranian government that worked for our freedom were also all invaluable. Thank you. Finally, we want to thank the media in the United States and around the world for keeping our case in the public eye. It means a lot to us. And now that we are home, We know you will give us the time we need to reconnect with our families and rebuild our lives. When Sarah was about to walk out of Evans prison last year, we vowed to each other that none of us would be free entirely until all of us were free. That moment has now thankfully come. Sarah, Josh, and I can now finally leave prison behind us. We want more than anything to begin our lives anew, and with a new appreciation for the sweet taste of freedom. Thank you, everyone.
Freed American hikers Shane Bauer and Josh Fatal addressing a news conference in New York hours after they arrived in the United States. They've been imprisoned by the Iranian government for more than 2 years. When we come back, an excerpt of the news conference with some of their family members and the third American hiker, Sarah Shore. Stay with us.